this setting, Sabbath day, is looking at the words that has come our way. As I pointed out, we have been looking at some serious kind of lessons, which are kind of different from lessons that we have had before. We could have identified the main presenters. You notice that this quarter we are not able to do that. All we are told is that these lessons are prepared by college presidents. And I think if we pay attention to what's going around the world, we can see that it was important for people such as these to come to the fore and try to present us with some really pertinent lessons for these times. We looked at some weeks ago, education and redemption, and that particular week's lesson was very instructive to, I guess, these college presidents who wrote these lessons, because it presented in a very clear way the challenge that faces Christian education, mainly faith-based schools like ours, and the challenge that these schools are being faced with, not maybe so much in our area, but in the wider part of the world, in Britain, in the United States, where people are, the powers that be, the great minds that be, are of the opinion that faith-based schools have lost their relevance because they can't see how an educational institution that would have creation and God as creator running through its curriculum would have been able to prepare people to live in this real world, as they put it. So from time to time lately, our schools have had to prove their necessity. We are told that in California, particularly, the legislature wanted to not to finance or to give money to these faith-based schools unless they're going to teach the LGBT curriculum as part of their teaching. And I said that it is because of a case that was made that our schools are disproportionately admitting minorities. Because if you take Loma Linda and Andrews University, two of our cream of the crop schools that we know, those of us who know anything about these two schools know that they can stand head and head to Yale, Harvard, these great universities. The difference is that these universities will not take certain kind of students. You would have heard President Trump over and over again speak to the fact that he went to an Ivy League school. He went to an Ivy League accounting school. Marco Rubio made a lot of comments last week about senators and people who he knows have gone to these Ivy League schools. So it seems that there's so much, prominence attached to people who go to these so-called Ivy League top schools of the world. We know for sure that our two schools, Loma Linda and Andrews, have stood head and head with them. In fact, studies have proven our students who have gone to those schools have come out on top in many competitions that have been held. And one of the things that was going against them was the fact that many of these things, when our students entered, these things were held on Sabbaths. And so our students were not allowed because of that to enter. We however heard that they were forced to make some changes because they came to the realization that there's something about these students coming from these faith-based schools, particularly our schools, that show them to be so much above other students from of these even top schools, even though they say we have creation money through our syllabus. And when they check it out, they come to realization, look, if students from these schools want to enter these competitions, if they want to work in our great um, departments in Silicon Valley, we can continue to deny them because whatever it is that made these students stand out so well, we don't think we can deny them entrance, no work in our great factories and institutions. So I don't want to make the point that these lessons coming to us these days come at some real crucial times. And we really need to pay a little close attention to them. Just one more time, forget on last week, we talk about the church and education. And let me ask Brother Leon just a question here, because I said when I saw the advertisement of the reclamation and whatever call it, the symposium that they had last week, I smiled uh, uh, and I chuckled. We have, and the president presented some great figures, but some troubling figures as well. The millions that we have now as part of our church, the thousands that we are baptizing every year, and the thousands that are going straight through the back door. We baptize thousands, and thousands leave the same way. And so these things cause us to really stop and listen. So, Brother Lane, I want to ask you a question before we jump into this week's very interesting lesson, Education in Arts and Sciences. Very telling. Brother Lane, what have you taken away from the symposium? Maybe you listened to it. The challenge that faces us, the many members of our church that are no longer worshiping with us, no longer worshiping at all, as we might take the chance and say. From what you listened to, did you come away with an idea? Okay, yes, this is what we can do to kind of turn things around. And all those dozens of people around Jennings that really are Seventh Adventists, and there are quite a lot of them, but who are not coming to church anymore. Did you take away something from that presentation on Sabbath that would say, well, yes, this is what we're waiting to learn. This is what we can do to really turn things around in that direction. Well, Leon, did you find anything that jumped out at you? And you can say, yes, we can deal with this. We can take it to the bank and get things turned around in our church.
Well, good evening to everyone.
Hmm.
Well, for me, I didn't really, I wasn't listening.
Oh,
However, as you asked the question, I realized I think our challenge is our approach and how we deal with things. I find that we're more focused in getting members, right, rather than keeping members, right? Now, oftentimes we hear about you have individuals coming into the church, and when they come in, we have to treat them as if they are babies taking milk, and then you wean them off milk and put them onto something else. And so there is a method there. But what I find is that when our focus is on getting them in, and once we have them in, we treat them as if they're eating food, hard food, and because they're young and they're not really more or less connected to our, let me use the word culture, right? They easily fall by the wayside when they realize that they really can't handle what is actually happening. And we as members who are even more seasoned, you know, we don't realize that we have to take these members and, sort of nurture them. Most of us think that if somebody would have done something wrong, we have the license to, chastise them and bring them down rather than helping them, right? And so I think if we change our attitude, our behavior, and realize that no matter what a person would have done, it would have happened already. It is our responsibility to help them and try to turn them around. If we take that approach, I think we'll keep more members. And even those who are out, if we have the attitude where we go out and try to bring them back in a loving way, and they see our attitude and our behavior is different, I think we can gain more members than what we have presently.
Oh, thank you very much. I think I see Brother Ian. Let's just spend about 2 more minutes with this. Brother Ian, I think I see you.
Yeah.
Brother Ian, you're there, right?
Yes, Ella. I just want to say.
I want you to see if you can identify for me one thing that you think is the reason why we have this mass moving away from the church. People who used to be there are no longer coming. Would you think you can identify one reason why this is happening?
Ella, good evening. Pleasant Sabbath to each one. Yeah.
To you too.
I would just want to add with what Brother George has been saying there. We have been studying this quarter about education. And I strongly believe that when I was a young boy growing up in the church, it was more educated message in the church. We have more Bible study and these things. Now, the preacher goes out and preach at a crusade. Sometimes the members that comes in doesn't really educated and knows the message. Then the church doesn't take enough time with those members to educate them. So any little thing that happened, they walked out the back door and they don't come back. We need to have more education to those people, just like what we're studying now, church and education. We need to have more of that. We need to spend some more time, doctrinate these members, speak to them about what God expects of them, because some of them, they comes into the church, they don't know exactly what they are really supposed to be doing. And when they made a mistake, some of us, it's how we deal with them when they make these mistakes, because they don't know, they're like babes, as Brother George is saying. And we need to educate them some more, spend some more time with them. I think the church is lack of that. We are not educating these members enough so that when anything happens, they will easily walk out the door. That's my submission.
Thank you very much. Now, if anyone has to, they can do it. But Jonathan is there somewhere around. But Jonathan, is he around?
No, he's not.
Okay. Well, Leon, you may let me know from time to time who are in the class, so we could bring them in. Now, as we go towards this week's lesson, something I want to ask. We are just playing that song just now, Sabbath Rest, Holy Rest. We set our work aside. We leave our cares behind on this day of Sabbath rest. Could somebody tell us exactly what do these words mean to them as we approach this week's lesson? We set our work aside. We leave our cares behind on this day of Sabbath rest. What do these words really mean to us when we listen to them or even when we sing them? What are these words saying? Sabbath rest, holy rest, setting our work aside, leaving our cares behind. What does it say? What do we mean by it? Sister Jackie is in the house, Brother Leon?
No, she's not.
Who else is there?
We have Brother Kim, we have Brother Foster, Brother
Or,
Zedekiah.
or Brother Zedekiah is there. Brother Zedekiah, if you can hear me. What do these words mean to you? We set our work aside and we leave our cares behind on this day of Sabbath rest. Brother Zedekiah, what do these words mean to you?
Why do we have to worry over things that for the week that worried us? Why do we have to really ponder these things on Sabbath when we know that the God who created the world, he knows everything that is going to happen and everything that is happening in the world. And we put on these things on ourselves and we have a problem, especially on the Sabbath, because we don't leave these things behind. And then the Sabbath, what we should be doing and what we should be learning, those things pass us by.
Okay. That's good. Now, we're looking this week, education in arts and sciences, and what a troubling lesson. Education in arts and sciences. And I tell you, if there's one thing that knocks at the door of our presentation of God as creator and this whole Sabbath matter that God created the world in 6 days and rested on the seventh, is this whole matter of science. We have evolution challenging us versus creation. And we're asking ourselves the question this week: how can we educate in the arts and sciences from a biblical point of view? What is there about the Bible that we read from time to time that we can use even in the education in arts and sciences? And if we zero in a little bit on the memory text, the heavens declare the glory of God. Check the verbs. The firmament showeth his handiwork. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night shows knowledge. Let's see if we can analyze this a little bit there to get us into this lesson. The heavens declare God's glory, and the firmament. Remember when God doing his creation, he put the firmament up there to divide the waters above from the waters below. That firmament is heaven. Now, what is it about the heavens? It says they declare. I'm not going to say what I think it means. Somebody tell me, what do we mean? The heavens declare God's glory, and the firmament shows his handiwork. We are talking about delving into science and art and see whether or not they harmonize with the Bible, or whether they are antagonistic towards the Bible, whether or not they are part of God's way of educating, or whether or not God has nothing to do with science as it is and art. What are we saying by these words? And remember, Paul warns us, Paul says to us, Brother Leon, Paul says, look, because of what the heavens are declaring and the firmament is showing, nobody is going to be with an excuse in the judgment, because the heavens are shouting too loudly and the firmament is showing too much. So whether or not you would have sat in a Sabbath school or sat in church and listened to a sermon, Paul says, look, all these things that the heavens are talking about are saying, and all these things that the firmament is showing, nobody can stand before God and plead innocence. No, whether you sat in church and listened to a sermon, you went to a crusade for 5 years and listened to a sermon, that will not absolve you. It will not free you, because the heavens are declaring the glory of God, and the firmament is showing his handiwork. Talk to us, Brother Leon.
All right, we can look at, we can focus on a number of things that we see around us. So if we think about the sun in the sky, the moon, you know, and how they function. We see the sun during the day, and the moon comes out at night when it's dark, right? And then we think even of the rain, you know. These are things that we have to look at, and then we'll try to understand whether or not there has to be some higher being or higher power that is, you know, involved in all of these things. And if we go a little further, when we talk about science, biology, we look at creation. You look at human being, and we focus on a baby. How do we appear in this earth? You know, where male and female come together, and you have the you know, fertilization taking place, and then you have a baby developing inside of you know, the female body. You know, these are the things we have to look at that will show the handiwork of God. And when we think of these things, we recognize that there must be someone that is greater than anything that we could think about in this world that is involved in all of this creation, right? And we will learn earlier on that even though we are going to study these things, we will understand that we have to be extremely careful, because the deeper we go in our studies, the more dangerous it can become if we're not careful with what we're doing.
All right. I'm going to take what you say and I'm going to bring it back to you and Brother Ian. Now, you spoke just now about the sun coming out and shining in the day and the moon in the night. Now, Brother Ian, what is it about the fact that the sun comes out in the day up to today and the moon came out tonight? What is it about that fact that you can use to educate somebody about God and his creation way back when he created? I ask that question because the scientists are saying, as good as Brother Leon may present that just now, science come up and say, no, there's no big thing about that. This thing about what happens there with these natural stuff out there, there is no divine power behind them. That is just how nature is. That is just how matter is. There is no divine nothing. They have this inherent energy in themselves, and they have laws that govern them. And God cannot interfere with these laws. That is what the scientists are telling us. And they brilliantly have written books upon books, presentation upon presentation, to prove that the laws of nature that they have out there, God cannot interfere with them. And so things just continue as they are. The sun come out and the moon come out. But Ian, what would you tell your child? The sun comes out every day, the moon comes out in the night. How can you use that fact to tell them that God is still in control, God is still in creator? How could you do that? When somebody will tell, oh, nobody with that. That is just the laws of nature operating by themselves, and God can't do anything about it. Talk to us, Brother Ian.
Yes. You know,
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night,
Brother Pastor, coming to you just now.
Okay.
Yes. Teacher. I have somebody big question. We have been discussing, a young man that is working with me right now. That we have discussing. We have been discussing something like this, just like what you're asking there. And he has said to me that there is no God. The earth is God. And a few times I try to use some text, especially the same text that we're looking at here now this evening. And I try to show him about, and in the book of Genesis, what God is, because he believes that the earth is God. But I'm trying to say to him, if you can accept that the earth is God, that the Bible told me that the heavens declare, and the same earth that we are seeing there, you have to see that is a higher power that is controlling this earth in the right place. Now you ask the question about the sun. Is the same thing happen? God put the sun is there to rule the day and the moon to give us light in the evening, which is the night. There are two things to separate the night from the day. The greater light, which is rule over the day, and the lesser light at the night. And so it this is what we look at again with science, as you were saying again. Plenty of these young people out there believe that it's only science and this is what is happening. And it is sometimes it is hard for you to convince some of them about it, but you have to take a time and try to explain from them the scripture. First of all, I asked that brother if he believed in the Bible. And I have to get him to start to believe in the Bible first before I could get all of these questions and all of these things answered for him. Because he is not 100% believe in the Bible. And so it is hard if you find people that is not believe in the Bible to explain to them these sort of things, because they believe, as what you said, in science is there and they have God have nothing to do with it. Thank you very much.
Brother Foster?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, whenever I try to give a thought, right, I love to go to inspiration. So I am quoting from the book of Education under the topic Science and the Bible, right? And I'm going to be reading some excerpts, but just bear with me. It says, I'm reading from page 128 under the topic Science and the Bible. It says, since the book of nature and the book of Revelation bear the impress of the same mastermind, they cannot but speak in harmony. By different methods and in different languages, they witness to the same great truths. Science is ever discovering new wonders, but she brings forth her research, but she brings from her research nothing that rightly understood conflict with divine revelation. The book of nature and the written word shed light upon each other. They make us acquainted with God by teaching us something of the laws through which he works.
No, wait a while, Brother Foster. Let me ask you, what is the book of nature? So we get clear. What is the book of nature?
The book of nature is what we see around us, as you were talking about the heavens and the earth.
Okay, beautiful. Just want to be on the same page. That's the book of nature. And so we're saying that scientists cannot bring anything new to disprove or to throw away what we can see. And that's why David said, the heavens declare, they show God's glory. And the science, don't go anywhere, Brother Foster. People are saying, the big, bright, educated people tell us that since they cannot put God in the lab, run a test on him with a hypothesis, carry out an experiment to prove that God is really there. Because they can't do it in the lab, then they say, well, God doesn't really exist. For the scientists, anything that they cannot go into the lab and prove scientifically, they don't believe in it. And it's not that the thing is not there, but scientists are people that the world looks up to very much. And when they say things, people tend to believe them. And so they say, look, we can prove that these things actually happen because we can work on it in the lab. And so because of that, we don't believe it. But as you rightly said there, Brother Foster, we're saying that what we see in nature and what we read about in the book, we see it in nature, the sun is shining out there. Now, if you wake up tomorrow morning and you can't find the sun, that's a problem. Because God said when he made them, you are supposed to come out every day and rule the day. That's your job. And that's what I tell you. And the sun has been still doing that up to now. If anything changes from that angle, then we have a problem. So, yes, we know science talks about the sun and everybody like to welcome the sun and all the benefits that we have. getting the sun out there. But they still don't want to believe that an intelligent mind is the one that brought that sun into being, commanded the sun to shine in the day and the moon and night, and they are still in obedience to that power up to now. Just wanted to zero in on that, Brother Foster.
Amen.
Go ahead.
Now,
Give us another one.
teacher, just quickly, no.
Yeah.
Let me
ahead.
zoom over. I want to go over to page 129. Right?
Okay, quickly. Yeah.
To say something here, to read something. It says, before the flood, the development of vegetable and animal life was immeasurably superior to that which has since been made known. At the flood, the surface of the earth was broken up. Marked changes took place. And in the reformation and in the reformation of the earth's crust were preserved many evidences of the life previously existing. The vast forests buried in the earth at the time of the flood and since changed to coal form the extensive coal fields and yield the supplies of oil that minister to our comfort and conveniences today. These changes, as they are brought to light, are so many witnesses mutely testifying to the truth of the word of God. Now, what I just read there is a whole mouthful, right? You're told that before the flood, the earth was one vast place and so on. But after the flood, we're told that those vast trees and so on, they today supply the earth with the coal and the different things and the oil and so on, right? They minister to our needs today. And we're told that these things are witnesses testifying to the truth of the word of God. You know? And please just let me finish now. I'm going to quote from page 1.
Wait, don't go ahead. Hold that one for a little bit. Let's look at something here. Hold that one for a little bit. Brother Leon, jump in here for me. Let me make a statement here that we talk more science and the arts and the Bible and God and education. Let's bear one fact in mind. Science seeks to explain how things work. Science never explains why. When we want to look at why certain things happen, we go into the field of metaphysics. Science can't explain the whys, and that is why they have a problem with the Bible and with God's account of it, because they can't explain the why, and anything that they cannot explain, they fail to believe it. Now, Brother Foster read a classic thing there just now, Brother Leon. Come in here with me. You would have heard right now the big problem around the world in the United States, even in the Caribbean area, even right here in Montserrat, where people there's a call being made to move away from dependence on fossil fuel. Now, you could imagine that Sister White, who never finished even elementary school, would have been able to pen such a classic statement as was read there by Brother Foster, that shows that after the flood, all these giants, that is how we get coal, that is how we get oil. All these big trees that have been buried for all these years, that is how oil is formed. And by the way, could you think a little bit, we're not going to go into it now, could you think a little bit, when Jacob ran away from home, where did Jacob go? He went to Iraq. Did you know that? Mesopotamia is Iraq. Do you know why that area of the world where civilization started, where writing began, where agriculture began, is the richest area in the earth? There's where all that oil from the flood, there's where it is. There are a lot of things he talking about now. Where's the Garden of Eden? The Garden of Eden was, when you look at the location, remember what the Bible said when he planted the Garden of Eden and the 4 rivers that watered, they are in Iraq. So nothing is here about the Garden of Eden historically when it was located was in that area. There's where civilization started. There's where the whole thing began. And that is why those Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, these places are so rich with all the oil. That is God's country. That is up there where the thing started. How could Sister White know to put these things to paper? These brilliant things. There's where the thing come from. Fossil fuel, the creation, the making of oil from all these trees that have been buried over the years. But Leon, before first to say anything is again, that it is so heavy. First to hold the peace for another time as we go on some more. This is heavy. But Leon, when you hear these things coming from Sister White, how this oil really comes about. And we hear people talk about it, but you never really stop to think about it. And here now, Sister White is bringing out this kind of thing. This is how the thing happened. That's why that area of the world where God's people were planted, you know what I mean? Where Jacob ran away from his daddy and his granddaddy and ran there. There's where the thing began. That how you think that Uncle Laban could have all them sheep, all them kind of thing. There's where agriculture began. And so, Brother Lane, I'm saying, look, when we look at this Bible and we read it and we put Sister White against it, nobody can confuse us. Nobody can take us down another road. Because as the thing rightly said, the Bible and nature support each other. It's just because them scientists can't tell us the reason why. That's why they don't want to come along with it. But it's right there. Now, but let me take you back. You said something. Now let's go with a little more, a little deeper. Hold it right about it there. Yeah. Yes, Bishop. Talk to us. Talk to us, Bishop.
You need to look up, you know. You need to look up.
Okay. No, I can't see. I can't see the screen. I can't see the screen.
Now, in connection with what was discussed just now, we told during the time of the flood, and even before the Exodus, that God had made provision for his people, that the world is going to be destroyed, but God preserved what man needed. And so he dumped everything in Canaan.
Beautiful.
Right? Making provision for his people 400 years in advance. So by the time they come, when he say he's going to let them to Canaan now, he already made provision for all what they need in Canaan.
Beautiful.
He already made the provision so that at the creation, he made the provision. When he destroyed the earth with the flood, he also made provision. You look at me. So
that's
that
right.
Nothing is moving by chance. So what man is discovering now between the earth's crust? Because remember now, the Bible says that the fountains of the deep were broken up.
That's right.
So that waters came up from below. It came up from above.
That's right.
Everything was turned upside down, inside out. And some things now were preserved from now up to now. In fact, in recent times, they found a horse with a green leaf still in his mouth, still intact. The leaf didn't dry up. Right? It shows you the condition of the world then and what it is now. If the same horse die now and you bury it with a green leaf, it will turn dry in less than no time. Right? So what we have here is superiority in terms of what we see. And as you rightly said, that scientists cannot explain what God has done in a lab.
Beautiful.
And let me just say something in a story where God and an atheist were arguing.
Okay.
Somebody had a story where can you make the point where the atheist talk about he can make this, he can make that. God said he don't want anything. And the atheist said, well, okay, I'm going to make something then. I'm going to make something from dust. Since as you make dust, take the dust and create man.
True.
So when these scientists scoop on, God said, no, that's my dirt. Make your own dirt.
True.
Right? So the truth is, we have nothing for which we can boast. And what we take as stuff to produce something is what had already existed. Right? Scientists can only take what existed to make something. They have not come with anything of their own. All right? So they can, and because they cannot rightfully claim it, you see, it doesn't exist. Even the vaccine that they're trying to make now for the COVID-19, what they put in together to make the vaccine is from what have existed. You make cars, you make machinery, you make iron, you make coal, you make all this stuff. It comes from someplace.
True.
Tell anybody right now who want to go manufacture something, you have to get the raw material from someplace.
Definitely.
So even if you buy the steel from point A or buy the aluminum from point B just didn't bring it up, point B meet it there and claim it. People who dig for gold and so on, it's not their gold, they're just finding it. And God already dumped all these things around so that if men are diligent enough and they search, they'll find it. God put it there. Right? So scientists are claiming things that they can twist and turn in the lab and do that kind of stuff. And another thing that scientists do is that they try to claim the right now to health and one's wellness. And so one of the biggest phenomena that they do, and sometimes they get it wrong, is when they put men to sleep.
Okay.
And then wake them up. They render you in an unconscious state for an hour, 2 hours, depending on how long the operation, maybe 10 hours, sometimes 2-3 days. And then they're able to wake you up out of that. So they believe because of all this achievement, and they don't credit anything to God, all they seem to do is to just give you medication that alters your mood and your consciousness for a while. When you unconscious to the point where you don't know what is happening for an hour or two. But when the medication wears off, you wake up. Are you in pain and discomfort from what they have done? And before that, when you read about medicine in the early days in the 15th century and so on, and you're going to amputate a man's foot, what do you think you do to sleep the man away? They give him 2 pints of brandy to drink.
True.
And then put the ball in his mouth. But then he started to study foot, everything gone.
True.
Right? So man has claimed something that they don't have. And that's why the world is sensitive, because we are claiming certain prerogative that doesn't belong to us. Only God or supernatural being has those prerogatives. And God has just lent us some of this wisdom and knowledge to help us to go through life. And we don't give God the credit, and that's the problem. And so when I can't figure out something, I say it doesn't exist.
True.
Right? But suffice to say, I'll pause here.
No. Pastor, I'm going to hold with you a little bit, and Brother Leon will jump in, help us. So let us piggyback on what the thing that Brother Leon brought up there. We're talking about science and arts and God. And Brother Leon mentioned about birth of intelligent human beings, the birth of a baby. And Pastor, it fascinates me. God, who created in his own image, now gives us the power to procreate. And I look at it, Pastor, the process of our new intelligent being, and it's fascinating. A baby is born from copulation between father and mother, and then fertilization takes place. And then that little fetus there is implanted in the uterus. And it stays there throughout that gestation period for 9 months in human beings or whatever it is in other animals. And in there is marvelous inside that uterus, that womb, it is protected and nourished. Everything the mother eats, the baby gets, the baby pass out its ways through the mother. And then when the time is right, parturition comes up, the child is born, and we continue the education of the child, showing the beauty in order. And when you look at that, Pastor, talk to us. When we look at how a baby is created, how can is born, is made through mother and father, how can we not understand the power of the super God? If we, you think about it, Pastor, we human beings could get together and we could make a whole person, through that process of supported by biological science. How could we doubt the creative power of God? What do you say to somebody along that line, Bishop and Pastor?
But
This idea was being able.
You have to start from the beginning. You have to point them back to the creation story, where you show them that God created, He made provision, and just like how God created before He made Adam and Eve, a woman has to mature enough so that the baby can develop in the right phase. Because a lady whose body is not mature she might have a baby, but it will have deformities or premature features. So we have to point them back to the fact that God created. It's easy for a person to accept God's hand in something if they can appreciate the creation story. But if they doubt the creation story now, everything else falls flat. So that a child born will born of nature. In other words, that they don't credit God to doing it. Because a man and woman with themselves, unless God doesn't bless that, nothing happens in it. Right? And so when God is to be fruitful and multiply, God placed within man the ability to do that. But outside of God doing that, man cannot do it. But again, it comes back to the creation story. If we understand the creation story, we can better understand and appreciate that what we see happening here has to be ordered by a supernatural being who is God. Right? And so everything has to start at the beginning, creation. And so if I believe that God created me, then I must be able to believe that God is giving me the ability to recreate. And so when I can create now, I do not take the credit. I say it's God who does it. And that's why Ellen White says that God says every child is born to the world was lent. Meaning the child is not yours. You bought it for 9 months, but it's still not yours. It was lent to you. So in truth and in fact, you have nothing for which you can boast. With all the trouble and childbirth and discomfort for 9 months, when you leave the child through all the pain and agony, God is saying, hey, he's not yours, he's mine. I just lent you. So you have to take care of the child because I'm going to ask him one day. Only a supernatural God can have those kind of prerogatives, not human being. But you must believe the creation story.
But then let me ask you a question now, bring you back in here. When the rainbow came about in the lesson this week, how could we use the presence of the rainbow to educate some? What is there? What do you know? Do you see any? Tell me what you see in the rainbow. Art, beauty, science. What do you see when you see the rainbow? When the foreign rainbow came out, why was the rainbow placed there? And every time you see a rainbow right now, what could you talk to the teacher about when you look at that rainbow? What lesson could you teach her about that rainbow that you see out there?
You asked about the rainbow. When you look at the rainbow, you see beauty. You see a little of everything. You see beauty, you see science, and you see art, right? So it's a little of everything. And I remember from a child, we always hear when you have rain and you see the rainbow, you go back to creation and you remember the whole story about the flood and what God would have said would happen after the flood, where he would not destroy this earth by flood again. And so that is how we grew up, and I mean, oftentimes we look up in the sky when we see the rainbow and we're looking at the different colors, they're so beautiful. right? And then we see the work of art there, right? And so, as I said, it's a little of everything. And even I can add, as we study the lesson and see all these things that God would have made and create, and all these wonderful things that would have happened on the Sunday, it struck me when it says that those of us who reject God would have no excuse on the day of judgment. We cannot plead innocence on the day of judgment. And these are the things that we as individuals have to focus on. You understand? Sit around you and see the beauty of holiness and see all the wonderful things that God would have done, you know. And if I go a little further, and back to what I hear Pastor was gave an example, and when you brought in the whole idea of the stages of reproduction, where you would have a baby being born, and then I look at Monday where it says that some things are so beautiful, and even though they're beautiful, they're not necessarily good and holy. And, you know, when I look at that question, I sat down and I'm trying to think about what is it in this world that can be beautiful but not necessarily holy and good. I couldn't think of anything. But as I heard Pastor deliberate this evening, I said, oh, I mean, I think we can use this one. And so even we talk about the birth of a baby, that is beautiful. But we know that there is a time and place for everything. And so we go back to the point where, I mean, one can have a baby, and we talk about baby out of wedlock and so forth. And so the whole idea of the baby is beautiful, but the process and what we did to cause this baby to be in this world, God is not too pleased with what we would have done. But the baby itself is a beautiful sight to behold. And that is why we would have sinned, we would have done whatever we have to do. But when that baby comes, we still say it is still a bundle of joy, you know? And so I said, wow, I have my answer right there as Pastor spoke.
You know, let me take us into biology and chemistry class a little bit. Let me ask a question. When you look at the rainbow, and you said there's art in the rainbow, and boy, is there art in the rainbow. We talk about education in arts and science. Here's this rainbow. The Bible says God placed that rainbow in the sky and told Noah and his children, every time you see that rainbow, you're going to remember that I said, I am not going to destroy this world again by a flood. But look at the rainbow. Let me ask a question, somebody. Is there any white in the rainbow? And is there any black in the rainbow? And then I will go on with something else. Is there black or white in the rainbow? But I didn't talk about the art. And there really is art. And by the way, I mean, those people who are agriculturists would learn a lot of stuff from if you really understand rainbow. You know, the rainbow is formed when the sun is shining in a certain area and there's rain coming in another area. You know, the light from the sun is broken up by water droplets in the atmosphere, and it gives us this color. That's what scientists explain to us. Now, it's funny, Brother Leon. God said, I placed that rainbow up there. I do it. Man tells us now, oh, this is how the rainbow is formed. Yes, God said put it up there, but physically or scientifically, the rainbow is formed when sun is shining somewhere and rain is falling somewhere else. And those water droplets break up the light from the sun. Let me say here, you know, and that's why science is so beautiful. How could people say science and the Bible are antagonistic? You know, Brother Leon and other members, there's a definite order. That's why there's beauty and art in the rainbow. There's a particular order in which the colors of the rainbow follow. And it always follows that there are 7 colors in the rainbow, and they follow that pattern from the top come down to the bottom. Where the rainbow is bends the most, you have the color violet. But from the top, it is red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. And when we study agriculture, Brother Leon, we are learning that germination and plant growth takes place as a result of those colors in the rainbow. Red and orange and green are the prime colors that support germination. I asked if white or black is in the rainbow. No, they are not in there. Do you know that black and white are not colors? They are not colors, because black is the absence of all colors and white is a combination of all colors. Neither is gray. Gray is not a color either. Gray is a mixture of black and white. And since neither black nor white are colors, gray is not a color either. And they are not found in the rainbow. I did an experiment once when I was in college in St. Lucia about the effect of a different color light on germination and plant growth. It was tremendous. So we say, look, everything that God put out there, it helps us scientifically, agriculturally. We can go into all of it. But that rainbow is not just out there just like that. But the very whole life on earth is supported by when we look at that rainbow and those colors that are in the rainbow. And we are told that the green which comes in the center of the rainbow does not do anything to support plant growth because the plant itself is green. So it does not need any rays from that green part. So that comes in the center. But it's marvelous when you look at it. There's nothing, and I tell somebody the other day, Brother Leon, people learn to make a computer because they study the human brain. They make a camera because they study the human eye. They made a telephone because they study the ear. As Pastor said, there's nothing that man can make except he's going to take something that God already made to do it. And so we can always take people back to what you're talking about by using the Bible and nature. What you see in nature, it talks about God. Only God could do things like that. Now, I thought of somebody to come in and tell us a couple of things here. Brother Leon, you said something there on the Sunday and Monday. Although after the flood, the world has been turned upside down, as Pastor said, and Brother thing would be about Brother Foster. Although the earth has been so thus destroyed, Brother Leon, as you travel around the world, and all of us who have traveled, haven't there been places that you have gone to and you got to say, wow, what a beauty of nature? You know, although, could you imagine it? Although the world has been so much degraded by sin, look at the beauty in the world still. Can you imagine what the earth was like before sin? And can you imagine what the world is going to be post-sin? I mean, it gives us hope. It gives us joy when we think about the fact, regardless what anybody can say to us. Look, God is a God of order. He's a God of beauty. And we can take you back to the Bible anytime and prove to see all these nice things we see here is because of a loving God. Ask some questions if you have to. Go, talk to me.
Yeah, and I just want to add, okay, you mentioned beauty a while ago, and you know, and when we talk about beauty, we look at a person, and individuals say this person is beautiful, and we ask the question, what are you focusing on? Are you focusing on the face of the person or the shape of the person? But as a Christian, we have to not think only of the facial appearance, but we have to think about the inside of an individual. And that is where the beauty is really, because when you think of a person's face, none of us have any control over the color of our skin. You know, some of us are very dark like me, and some are very light like you, you know, and so we have no control over it, you know. And so people said, oh, that person is ugly, you know, and is God pleased? Because that person has no control over his facial appearance, you know, to a point. What we focus on is the interior of an individual. And that is why, even though as we focus on science and art, we have to look at the Christian perspective in this whole argument. And what is the relevance of us understanding science and art and don't understand the right and wrong, because you spoke about science and experiment and so forth. And when we do experiment, we're trying to figure out something and we're trying to dispute something. And so we as Christians, we have to focus on something that is right or wrong. We have to be able to know the Jews between good and evil. We have to be able to see when there is truth and when there is error. And that is why even in mathematics, when we talk about logics, our mind is supposed to be so well equipped. And as you spoke about our educational system in our church and so forth, our people, we are supposed to be so equipped that we're able to understand the Christian part, right and wrong, good and evil, and know truth from error. And that is when the whole idea of art and science that we would have studied is going to make sense to us as Christian individuals.
I want to take us, if we get a time, to Thursday and so on, and talk about God's, Brother Leon, and remember, look, God is a God of beauty. God is a God of art. We're going to go down a little bit when Pastor over here help us here again. How, when the God was given instruction to build the tabernacle, we're going to try and get there. You're going to see how God is just a fascinating, artful beauty. Look, God loves beauty. And that is why when people or churches were supposed to look so nice and beautiful, and when we dress and look nice and we build nice homes, I mean, we're just going down the road that God went down. God is a God of beauty. But before we do that, Brother Leon, you jump on something there and trouble me. Let me go to it. You talk about knowing right and wrong. Let me ask Brother Ian a question here. Brother Ian, if you had the choice, Brother Leon said something here, let's look at it. If you had the choice between choosing wisdom and knowledge, which one would you choose? If you had a choice, choose wisdom or choose knowledge, which one would you choose and why would you choose it between wisdom and knowledge? Brother Ian, you there? Brother Ian is not there.
I'm here.
Talk about Ian.
Yes.
You have to choose between wisdom and knowledge. Which one would you choose?
I will choose wisdom.
Why?
Because in choosing wisdom, wisdom will give me understanding. Wisdom will give me all the best things I want to be able to do. And I would look at Solomon. He chose, and when he had that same choice to choose, and he chose wisdom, and all God was granted to him all the other things that he needed.
Brother Leon, is wisdom and knowledge the same thing?
No, there is a difference, but I would agree with Brother Ian in terms of the wisdom, because lots of us, we study and we have the knowledge as we know it. Knowledge, that's the information, but we are not able to analyze the information so that it can be to our advantage, right? And so I would tend to agree with him that if you choose wisdom and you're wise, then you'll be able to, there would be understanding coming there. In order for you to be wise, and if you're wise, then you're exposed to things and you're able to assess all the things that are around you. And so I think if you have a choice, right? I mean, it's good to have the knowledge, and then you use wisdom, to assess the information that you internalize. But if you have to make a choice, a definite choice, I would agree with the wisdom, because I think, and that is what the author is talking about here also, if we have the knowledge of art and science and we're not understanding right from wrong and we're doing all the wrong things, then there's a problem. And that is why even we go on to the whole idea of scientists. Scientists are brilliant and they're able to do lots of things. I mean, there's an example here on the Wednesday which speak about one could argue too that the greatest scientists involved in the work of creating biological and chemical weapon of mass destruction might be highly educated, highly gifted, but what are the fruits of their work? You know, as stated before, knowledge in and of itself is not necessarily a good thing, right? And so if you have the knowledge and you're not wise, then you are in trouble.
You know, you went right down there in the class ahead of me, Brother Leon. I was just going to ask the question, as you've stated there. Is it a fact that having knowledge is not necessarily a good thing? If you tell somebody so on the surface, they would wonder what you're talking about. Having knowledge in and of itself is not really such a good thing. Because all them big, bright people out there, Brother Leon, have a lot of knowledge. What have they done with it? You wouldn't argue with anybody that Adolf Hitler is not a brilliant fellow. Look at what Hitler did with his knowledge. He systematically killed over murdered, slaughtered over 6 million Jews just because he don't like them. Well, he's a brilliant fella. All them fellas who had made these chemical weapons, they call it bioterrorism, where you can use would be a virus or bacteria, and you like anthrax and smallpox and Ebola and botulism, and you can let that loose on the world to kill so many thousands and millions of people. Yes, you're bright. Yes, you have knowledge. But what did you use that knowledge to do? And that is why we had to say, if you had a choice, choose wisdom, because wisdom is the application of the knowledge. You can have knowledge, but you don't know what to do with it. Wisdom tells you the difference between right and wrong, good and evil, truth and error. That's wisdom. You can have the knowledge. Wisdom allows you to apply the knowledge at the right time, at the right place, and for the right reason. You remember what the devil said to Eve? All about it with God. God knows when you eat of the tree, you're going to be wise. You're going to be like gods, knowing good and evil. Oh, yeah. Look at what they came about, what happened to them in their search for the so-called wisdom that the devil spoke to them about. They destroyed themselves and destroyed, technically speaking, though they can't really destroy God's Garden of Eden. So having knowledge is only one little thing, but having that knowledge could put you in a whole bunch of trouble, because mainly people who do these things, they wonder, what is really at the bottom of all the problems we have right now in our world? You know, we say that politicians just mess up the whole world. I mean, just a minute. Have we sat down in a corner and think about what is really happening in the world right now with COVID? I mean, over 270,000 people in the United States alone are dead. And the president said, no, that's not a virus. That's quite okay. Isn't he supposed to be? And he tell us he went to Ivy League school, Brother Leon, and that he's so bright. And all them senators in there, all of them are lawyers. Most of them went to Ivy League schools. And how them so-called educated people, full of knowledge, will have plunged over 270,000 people by doing nothing and by disregarding the fact.
And so many people are there.
They had knowledge.
What you're saying.
Exposing food. So they keep quiet and go along with to get yourself a food. That's all of that.
And if I were to what Elder is saying, you know, you talk about what is happening in this world today. We are all brilliant scientists.
True.
We are all those individuals. How are they not able to contain this COVID virus? And so these are some of the things that we have to sit back and say, well, you know, there are lots of atheists in this world, and there are lots of individuals who would say they know God, and, you know, man can do everything. You know, we can create everything. So, you know, God is on his throne and he's looking, what can we do now? We are powerless.
Certainly.
But we as Christians, we have hope because we would have gone to the Bible and we know what would happen in the last days. And so when we see these things, it is for us to recognize that we are approaching the end of time, and then we program ourselves so that we can be prepared.
Yeah, we're coming at you.
Is not on COVID.
Hello?
Our focus is not on COVID. Our focus is not to understand how to deal with this thing. Our focus is on making sure that our election is sure so that when he appears, we are there to meet him.
Hello?
Okay, yeah, hello, come in.
My sister.
Yes, we can hear you. Come in. Somebody's trying to come in there, Brother Leon.
I think Brother Terence was trying to come in, but I'm not hearing him.
Brother Terence? Okay, check him out if you come back. Now, let us zero in a little bit on God, this master person of beauty and order and art. You know, I smiled, Brother Leon, when I read Exodus. And I challenge all of us to read from Exodus 25 to Exodus 31. Just read Exodus, and you are going to marvel at the kind of mind that, if you can put it in human terms, that God has. When God was going to build the tabernacle and the instructions that God gave to Moses, you need to read it. All the details of how the tabernacle was supposed to be made. In chapter 25 alone, Brother Leon, God explains to Moses exactly, detailed account of how he wants all the furnitures that are in the tabernacle to be built. The ark, in verse 10, look good. I want you to make it out of this kind of wood and do it this way. It must be this dimension. It must be that dimension. The mercy seat with the two cherubim, make it out of this. It was, look, it was something at the table of shewbread and the dishes in chapter 20, verse 20 to 29. The candlestick. In all of these, God gave specific detail. Make it out of this and shape it this way and overlay it with gold. I mean, it is just something else. And then in chapter 26, God tell him, look, this is how I want you to make the tabernacle itself. The curtain. This must be the kind of material to make the curtain. This must be the color of the curtain. This must be the length and width of the curtain. I want you to double the curtain in this area. And I want you to use this kind of curtain rod. God was something else when God was making the tabernacle. And in chapter 28, he said, now look, and when you're going to make the priest's garment, this is how I want you to make the priest's garment. The priest's garment must have several parts to it. It must have a breastplate and an ephod and a robe and a coat outside and a bit. And this is how I want you to make it. It must be made of gold, color gold, blue, purple, scarlet, everything. God told it. And then I smiled, Brother Liam. You should read chapter 31, verse 1 to 5. God said, Moses, listen here, let me tell you something. There's a certain man. He's of the tribe of Judah. His name is Bezaleel. He is the son of Uri, who is the son of Hur. This man, I have put within him all the artistic ability to cut stone, to carve wood, to do things. God said, I have made that man. So I want that man to be in charge of everything I tell you to do with the tabernacle. God said, I have put within him this artistic ability. And I want you to make him in charge. His name is Bezaleel. I want to read that Pauline. I just smile. I say, God is not easy. He told him exactly how we want. And that's what we're saying. When we're going to build the churches and double thing, God said the thing will be beautiful. I don't want a cheap nothing. I want the best thing in my house. You know what I mean? I want this overlaid with solid gold. You know what I mean? And I want the olive oil to be pure olive oil. You know that when that light up in the tabernacle and the gold that covers all these things, Can you imagine, Brother Leon, you're in a building overlaid with gold and the light is shining? Can you imagine how inside the temple look? And so we're saying when it comes to the church, it must be the same with that one that God said, look, all he wanted to now is build house and leave my house how he want to build it. I mean, I don't like that. God is a God of order. And that's why he said to his people, tell Moses, look, tell the people, I say, wash their clothes and bathe their skin and put on some nice clothes. And the church, they come and look for me. Come and say, so God said, look, we're not coming out to the table to worship me. Come in a nice clothes. You know what I mean? God just wants us to look a kind of way. God has beauty and order in his things. So when we talk about art, God is a God of art. If we look at it, look at the building the ark. Then God give Noah all the specification, the kind of wood, the dimensions, everything. God gave it to Noah. God is a God of beauty. So when we look around the world today and we see beauty, it causes us to think about our God. And it causes you to think also about what God's heaven is going to be like. Think about it for a while and somebody talk to me. When you talk about beauty and you read Revelation, talk to me. Yeah, go ahead, brother Ian, talk to me. Ian, I see you there. Go ahead, talk to me.
Yeah, you mentioned something there, Brother Joseph, that that's something going across my mind.
Go ahead.
And sometimes I listen to you sometimes, especially when you're at church, when you said there's certain things that you don't touch because you have no authority to touch. Is a deacon decide to move this and move that.
Yeah.
And you was and what we're looking at now again is in the tabernacle. Back into the same tabernacle where God asked Moses to manipulate it, specifically how we do it. Now, how do we, I just said the church is supposed to be beautiful and supposed to be this way. And when I looked at how we have the church and how we dealt with it, sometimes I wonder if how God felt how we kept his house. Because I know a lot of us don't keep our own house like that and we don't treat it that way. But we treat God's house in our house. And as you said, that God said to these people to go and bathe, take off those dirty rags that they have on, and put something nice and come and do and look at my feet. How do we treat God's church, brother? It's very important. And as Brother George said earlier on, some of the things we have to know right from wrong. And that's why I said earlier on again, the church needs to be educated. And when the church is educated, some of these little things we will understand. Because when you came into the Adventist church, and I was a young boy, there was a lot of things that we did not do and go and do in the church. Now anything happening in the church. And we got to take care.
But Ian, if I were to add to what you're saying, what happened is that if we try to act out the Bible in church, we would be in a far better position than where we are right now. Now the church has to be prepared in the way as spelled out in the Bible. The elder spoke about duty. And so when a lot of us think that there is no big deal. You just come to church and you pray and worship and that's it, and you go. And they don't focus on the beauty. We look at the flowers in the church, how the pews are laid out, how the utensils are nice and shine and everything. So when you get there, your mind is in a worship mood. And then when you think about the Bible, as you said, the elder said, if you know you're not supposed to touch certain things, you don't touch it because you're learning. If you're not supposed to go in a certain area of the church, you don't go. And so you're learning, you understand? And so you get the feeling, the excitement that you are in the presence of God. Now, if you don't care about anything, you would just go in, come out, and then it's no big deal. But when we go to church, our mind is supposed to program that we are acting out the Bible. And there's where the art and so forth coming in. This is the kind of art we're supposed to be exhibiting in the church. When we get there, we're acting out the Bible, which is extremely, extremely important. So I'm all for a beautiful church. When we travel and we go overseas, and if we go to North America, and you go to these churches, these places are so beautiful. When you go in, you feel you're ready to worship. You understand? So we have to get to that stage because God expects us, to keep his edifice in such a way that we feel we are proud, we are happy that we can keep it in such shape or form or fashion, and worship him while we are there, But as I said, most of us, we really don't care. We drop things anywhere. We drop it in the church. We drop things any old place. No. And these are the things that we have, the little things are the things we have to focus on and educate individuals on. And even if, well, we'll never get it perfect, but we have to start somewhere. And if we move on and continue, we will be helped along the way by God, because all of what is happening now is as a result of Satan. It says, as with everything God has done, we have an enemy who distort and exploit it. And that is the devil. And we have to fight against that.
We want us to, as we wind down, we want us to go back and wonder. Let's zero in back, Brother Leon, on church right now, Brother Ian. Just look at it. We touched, God came into Wednesday where you touched Wednesday, foolishness and wisdom. And remember, Brother Leon, writing the lesson this week on the Wednesday there, that Paul warns us about keeping certain company. Paul says, look, if you see a brother behave in a kind of way, I want you to mark that brother. Have no company with him. Don't treat him like an enemy, but admonish my brother. Keep no company with him that he might be ashamed. If he's not walking according to what, because this is, and somebody says, old people always tell you, to walk with the wise, you shall be wise, still to walk, the fool going to come fool just like him. You got to do it. So let's talk about it a little bit in the world. When we look at this whole thing, the Bible says in Proverbs 1:7, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. So, Brother Leon, what would you say? People come to church and they behave this kind of way all the time. They say anything in church. They talk out when they feel and when they want. And dare you try to stop them, or dare you try to correct them? Dare you try to do it? They don't say anything in church. Remember what God said to the priest as they write? He said, take this linen of blue and write against it, holiness unto the Lord. And that must be on the priest's clothes. Holiness on, don't you see it written on the pulpit? That is the thing there? Yes. And when I was baptized and I came to the church and I look up there on that pulpit and you see the thing there, it feels as if you're not supposed to go too close. You ever watch Malcolm when he comes to church and he comes in when he reach how he take off his hat? Not that's how we have to do it. But there's something about these other people in these churches that recognize that when they come into church, the kind of respect, the kind of awe, the kind of reverence that they have to display when they come into the church. A long time ago, when Brother Sam and Sister Sam and Brother Reginald Edwards and Brother James Edward, when people come to church, them gentlemen, when they came in, and Brother Parker, Brother Ian's daddy, they take off their hat and they bow a little bit. And the first thing they do is to kneel down and say a prayer. I mean, I don't understand. So, Brother Leon and Brother Ian, talk to me here. Are you saying that these people lack a knowledge or an understanding of God and what he requires of us? Talk to me. Let's look at it. Let's wrap up around this kind of thing. Application of wisdom and knowledge in worship. Talk to me. Is it that they don't know?
I think
they lack the knowledge, or it's not wise?
I think I would not say that all of them and all of us doesn't know. Some of us know what to do, but we are reluctant, and we, as Brother George read something there about what the devil wants us to do. Some of us allow the devil to do certain things. Now, it all comes back again to education to some of us that doesn't know, and some of us know. Ella, on the same platform that you touched on, said that part, Mark, where that curtain that was on the podium.
Hold it onto the Lord.
Where is that? Where is that thing now, Ella?
True.
Where is that thing on the platform there?
True.
Now? It is not there anymore. There are certain things removed, certain things that we don't have there anymore. And so there's something there was there to show you that this is holiness unto the Lord. It's just like the sanctuary service, Ella. Only a certain people, only the priest would allow to go in certain place. The priest would allow to touch certain things. And as Brother Joy said, that we need to get to where what the Bible said about what we're supposed to do. And when we get to that point, then we will have the beauty of holiness in the church. And we're studying here the beauty back to Monday, Ella said,
Monday
of holiness. And we cannot see the beauty of holiness if we don't have it there. It's we, no, Ella. It's we, the person. We are the one. We are what fault. And again, I said, we as this generation need to help the younger generation that is coming up. You speak about the other churches, and as you rightly said, Malcolm, when he comes into a church, he always had, he's do this. What you see what is going on now? The other churches then is picking up the things then that we supposed to be carrying on, and we are dropping them off slowly because we are talking about all kind of things. We're taking the world in, and what we're supposed to have in, we are pushing it out.
But as I was jumping, Elder, I'm going to jump in here. I'm going to jump in here because, and look at the question the Elder asked, and he spoke about your father, and he mentioned a few other names like the Sams and the Edwards and so forth. And I said to myself, and I'm thinking, because you said that we, the older generation, have to talk to the younger generation. But I realized that there is a disconnect somewhere because, I mean, I am not in the same school like yourself and even the elder to a point, because I came out of the Moravian Church and I don't have a mother and a father who came up in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. But I mean, I was young enough and wise enough to see what was happening around me, and what was happening then surely is not happening now, you know. And so I asked the question, where have we gone wrong? Because what we saw happening when those older folks, what supposedly in inverted commas training the younger generation, what would have gone wrong? Because the younger generation then is the old ones now who are supposed to be thinking about the younger. But if there is a disconnect, what is it that we have to teach to the younger generation? And that is very scary, you know, because we have moved away from what was, you know. And so the question is, how are we going to get back there? Because we, as the older folks now, we have a lot to learn and unlearn, you know, before we can even help the younger generation that is coming up there. So we have plenty work to do.
Okay, as we wind down the weird, go ahead.
Yeah, can I give a closing thought here, brother teacher?
Well, certainly, Brother Foster. Jump right in.
Yeah. Now the testimony volume 3 tells us, page 366, says that the closing work for the church, right, is to gather, is to prepare people for Christ's second coming, right? Now, how do we prepare? How do we do that? Because remember, we have to remember that within the church, there are two classes of people, right? Wheat and tears, right? So then we are told that the work of the church is to prepare a people, right? Prepare a people. Now, when instruction is given, brother teacher, when instruction is given as to, because I listen to all the discussions and so on, talking about, you know, the right way the church is to be run and so on. When the instruction is given, those who rebel, we are told that the unbelievers, you know, those who don't believe and those who don't follow the instruction that is given, they won't enter into the kingdom, you know. It is those who are obedient, the obedient ones, those who follow instructions, right? They are being led by the Spirit. So we are not to feel disappointed, right? Do the work that God has given us to do faithfully, instructing the people, letting them know what is to be done and how God wants his church to be run. God is a God of order, right? And so those who rebel and those who don't want to, then what can you do? You just have to move on with the faithful few who will accept instruction and walk in the light. That is my closing thought.
Okay, let me make a statement here and then I'm going to
Just let me say this, you know.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I agree with what Brother Foster said, and I agree with him. But what I'm saying here, the church is God's agent on earth here. And so when nomination time comes, daytime, and the church elect you, Brother Aswell Joseph, as the elder of the church, or me as a deaconess or deacon, or whatever we are appointed to do, we are to be firm when we are administering to God's work. We allow too many things to get away in the church as leaders. And then it comes at norms to others who are not fully educated with God's work. And so it comes to them like the norm. And so we leave it all the time. We leave it all the time. We leave it. And then they believe that what they're doing is right. We need to stand up like these old folk, old fathers before, when they said that there's no tiny and this to stand up there and there's not, you go up there. Then when they said it, they mean it. And you elder knows, when you hear like what Edward them speak, you trembled. Because when they're telling you something, they're not just telling you, they're telling you with a passion. And you're afraid to do it again. We need to stand up as leaders. And let us be called as leaders. That's my submission. Thank you.
I'm going to make a shift and invite Leon to make a closing thought, you know, because let us really sit back and think about it. Think about us as members of this church. Let's think about the Adventist church, and let's think about our role, what God called us to do in the world in reference to the three angels message. What are we really doing about it? You know, let's think about it a little bit. Something we're talking this week about education in arts and sciences. And we're saying that, as Brother Foster rightly read, science and the Bible don't really go against each other, you know. In fact, what we see in the natural world, we can read in God's great book and it supports it. The only problem, like I said, that the scientists have is because they cannot tell us the why. They see how the thing happens. I can go into a classroom and get up and start to teach photosynthesis. How is it a plant can take water and minerals from the atmosphere, mix it with carbon dioxide from the air up there, you know, from the soil, I mean, with carbon from the atmosphere, and it with that chlorophyll, that green substance in the leaf, and make a sweet julie mango or make an avocado or make a watermelon. I can stand up in the class and I can talk about the how. Well, this plus that equal that. But I don't know why. And I can't say why. The only person that can give us the answer to this kind of whys is God. And we as Adventists now will know because we studied much more than other people. We have this marvelous way of educating people through the Sabbath school. But then again, what has gone wrong with us? We said we have operate the largest educational system of any church in the world. We have over 5,000, close to 6,000 elementary schools, almost 3,000 secondary schools. Yeah, over 114 universities and colleges we have. Endless clinics and dispensaries. We, the Adventist Church, we have over so many, but look, all them millions of members. We started out just the other day in 1863 with a little church of 3,500 people. And look at where we are now in the couple of years that have gone by. We are over how much, a million members strong, but what is wrong? Still something is wrong with what used to happen, how the thing used to be, and how the thing is now. I mean, people, we go to church if you want to. We sit down in church and we know, big thing, get up and go, no problem with that. So what do we have to do? Let's look at it. Look at Eden, Brother Leon, how Eden was. And then look at Eden when it's come back and God's New Jerusalem. When we read Revelation chapter 22, Revelation 21 and 22. Read what heaven is going to be like. So look at what Eden was. Look at what the next Eden is going to be in God's heaven. And then also within that transition is where we are now. Why is it? What is happening right now? We are between Eden and between God's New Jerusalem. What are we called upon to do in this interim as we get ourselves and the church prepared for God's New Jerusalem? I mean, Brother Leon, anybody can say what they want, but you must say, aren't we got to say to ourselves, well, you see, me, Leon, this is what I think I have to do. Me, Ian, this is what I have to do. Because people can say whatever. And while it is true that you're trying to zero in and do what you know you have to do and what you think God needs you to do, because at the end of the day, is you going to stand up before the judge. And remember what Paul says, nobody will have any excuse because the heavens still declare the glory of God. So as we think about this transition between Eden and the New Jerusalem, give a closing thought there, Brother Leon, Brother Ian. What would you say to yourself? What would you say to the leaders? And all of us are leaders, by the way. Remember, Sabbath school teacher, you're a leader. All of us leaders. What would you really say as we contemplate where we are trying to go, and with all this knowledge of the beauty in God's world, even though sin has done so much, Brother Leon, you have traveled all over the world. I'm sure you have seen some beautiful places, beautiful things in nature, so fantastic. And you say, well, what will heaven be like when I get there? What do you tell us? What would you say to us as we close tonight? What would you admonish us to do as we look to that end?
As I sum the lesson, I would just like to say to us that God desires us as a people to seek wisdom and to treasure it also, and continue along that line so that we're able to see and understand the difference between right and wrong, good and evil, truth and error. That is what is going to make a big difference in our lives as Christian individuals. So as we focus on the whole idea of science and art and education, let us understand that as Christians, we have to go a little further and recognize that whatever we study, whatever we learn in these areas, we ought to be able to apply Christian principles to those. And I would end with one of my famous teacher at school, Michael Francis, I remember when he used to teach mathematics and we do equations, and he would say, would normally say some teachers will teach that when you cross the equal sign, you change from minus to plus. And Michael Francis would say there is no magic. You know, you have to understand, you have to balance the equation. And then you will see that when you move from one to the next, it turns from negative to positive, but you need to understand why, right? And so let us continue to seek wisdom, because that is a principal thing that we ought to do. And as long as we do that, for the balance or the remaining of time that we have on the face of this earth, it would be to do what God expects us to do, doing the right, doing the good, and making sure that in all things that we do, we are truthful with what we do, and we'll be able to, others will be able to see us, and the good that we have and they can see in us will rub off on them, and will continue to make this world a better place.
Beautiful. Brother Ian, give a closing thought to us as what you advise us, what you advise your talk to yourself, what would you advise us as a leader in the church? What would you say to us as we contemplate the here and the now and the then where we intend to go?
I would like to say to each and every one of us that let us encourage each other, let us study, and let us live the life that God would want us to live here on earth. It is not an easy task, but as leaders, let us really take the role that God has called us to lead in our church and educate those who are not really truly educated in the Word of God, and so that all of us can make it to God's kingdom. Because no matter what we is doing, heaven is our goal. And let us try to encourage each other and to work with one another so that we can make it to heaven at last when Christ is in the
Beautiful.
Before all of us.
Fantastic. Let us bow our heads as we give a closing prayer. We want to thank you, Lord, for this lesson this week. We have seen all the evidence of your beauty in nature. We know that you are God of order, you are God of beauty, and there's no one that can be like you. You have made us in your image, in your image. You have given us also the ability to appreciate this beauty in nature. And so you gave us eyes that we can behold it. And Lord, as we look on the things that are taking place in this world, we contemplate Eden and what it will be when Eden is restored, and we long for the day. But there's so many things that have gone wrong. And Lord, we want you to help us that right where we sit, right where we stand, that you will help us to do what lies in our power to restore the worship, restore the beauty in the worship, and restore the beauty in the knowledge of you as our God and our Savior. Be with us all. And may the sentiments expressed by Brother Leon and Brother Ian be expressed by all of us in your church. Help us look forward to the day when we can see you for ourselves. But between now and then, let your Spirit live with us to continue to teach us and make us ready for the day when we can see you for ourselves. Bless the church, those who've listened. We pray that they have learned something about you as the God of science, the God of beauty and order. May we all press on to that point where we can see you for ourselves. This is our prayer with the forgiveness of our sins. In Jesus' name. May God bless all of us.
Pleasant Sabbath to all.
Good, good.
Good night, everybody. Happy Sabbath.
Happy Sabbath to you,
all.
How are you doing?
Yes. Not bad at all. I was there in another program where I have the young people now doing their Sabbath school. The inverse here, so that's where it was. So
no problem.
Yeah, but I was listening at the same time. You know, multitasking.
Yes. Okay, as usual.
Yes, yes.
Take care and see you soon.
Okay, yes. Okay, tomorrow.